Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content that I'm making, please click that subscribe button. Also remember to click that bell button and make sure to tick that box to send all notifications so you don't miss out on any videos. With that in mind, let's get on with the video. What's up guys, welcome to Monchkinz Gaming, where we take your gaming to the next level. This is Monchkinz logging in to bring you another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. And welcome back to my Should You Pull series, where I give you reasons why you should be pulling and why you should not be pulling for upcoming banners in Opera Omnia. Today we're going to take a look at the Golbez Lost Chapter banner, which includes obviously Golbez and 7's EX 15 and 35 CP weapon. The third wheel for this one is going to be Laguna, which you can get his 15 and 35 CP weapon as well. So without further ado, let's start this video. So today we are actually going to start with the main character for the Lost Chapter, because his EX is a returning EX, which is the Obsidian Scales for Golbez. This gives him the EX ability called Twin Meteor, which is a 5-hit dark AoE magic brave attack plus HP attack, which also inflicts a dark resist down for 4 turns on the enemies and will trigger another 5-hit dark AoE magic brave plus HP attack afterwards as well. The Stolen Brave can overflow to 150% of his max Brave and moderately raises the Brave damage dealt to a single target. The HP damage is going to be split equally amongst all enemies and will grant him 3 stacks of Shadow Dragon for 6 turns. While Shadow Dragon is active, he will get a plus variant on his Brave attack, turning it into a Dark Magic Brave attack plus Dark Melee Brave attack by Shadow Dragon. This has a slow recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 limit break, it will increase the Brave damage dealt by Twin Meteor. At 2 out of 3, this will slightly raise the max Brave overflow limit. At 3 out of 3, this will slightly increase the recast speed of Twin Meteor. Now let's take a look at the realized variant of this weapon. At 0 out of 3 limit break, this moderately raises the Brave potency of Twin Meteor and doesn't consume the ability used for the next turn. This also turns his HP attack to its plus variant, which is going to be a 2-hit Dark Magic Brave plus HP attack plus a Dark Melee Brave plus HP attack by the Shadow Dragon. At 1 out of 3 limit break, this increases his max Brave and attack. At 2 out of 3, when using his Twin Meteors, he will now grant himself the Atonement of 4 Hatred for 4 turns. And when the quest starts, he will automatically have 1 stack of Shadow Dragon straight away, which is the max is 3 for 6 turns. This also gives him a filled up EX gauge to the max at the start of the quest, and the Atonement for Hatred has the following effects. It increases his max Brave overflow limit and raises the Brave damage dealt when hitting targets as weaknesses. Finally, at 3 out of 3, when using Twin Meteor, this will now execute a 5-hit Dark Magic AoE Magic Brave plus HP attack 3 times instead of the 2, and will increase the total Brave potency of the ability. The bonus variant that you are going to be getting here is called the Weak Raging Attack. When hitting target's weakness, it raises the attack by 2% up to 5 times. So after hearing all this information, how much should you be investing on Golbez? I honestly feel like 0 out of 3 is okay for his minimum. However, I still want to go with 2 out of 3 because this is where you get the Atonement for Hatred buff, plus you get a filled up EX gauge at the start of the quest, and you get a stack of the Shadow Dragon straight away, which is something that Golbez really needs, and this immediately makes it so that you can actually use him to his full potential after a turn. So in saying that, I do feel like 2 out of 3 is the minimum requirement, and if you do decide to put 2 out of 3 as your minimum, of course, as you guys know, I prefer that you go all the way to 3 out of 3, plus you get an extra activation for the Twin Meteor. Imagine this at the start of the quest, basically saving you a lot of HP attack plus plus during those long fights, so you can actually just activate this and pretty much clear the entire wave and you can move forward. Now, the brand new thing that I wanted to do when it comes to my Should You Pull videos is trying to make the closest comparison for the characters that are being featured. So this isn't exactly identical comparison. So when I say the closest comparison, it can be because they're both melee characters, they could be magic characters, or their abilities sort of work kind of the same way, or if there's a mixed hybrid of two different characters making it into the featured character. So don't get out your pitchforks and say, you know, this character is not this and that. This is just the closest comparison to the featured character, because there's really no way for one character to be completely identical to another one. This is just my own personal opinion. If you have your own opinion, leave it down in the comments below. So for Golbez, I do highly feel like he works just like Ace. Now, Ace is obviously a magic DPS, whereas Golbez is sort of a mix. He is two of his abilities are melee attacks, and his EX is his magic attack. However, they do still work the same way, kind of, because of the stacking mechanics of their buffs. And to be completely honest, they are both very easy to use and are beginner friendly when it comes to learning how to play them, because they're pretty much just big DPSs overall. So I think Golbez sort of works just like Ace, with a stacking mechanic. However, there are obviously differences, and Golbez is stuck to the dark element as well. Okay, so moving on, let's take a look at 7's EX, which is a new EX weapon we're getting in the global version of the game. This is called the Sleipnir Tail and gives her the EX ability called Sadistic Spikes. This is a 3-hit melee brave plus HP attack executed twice. The greater brave damage targets afflicted with the snake bite debuff, and the stolen brave can overflow up to 120% of her max brave and will deal a 20% splash damage to non-targets. This has a normal recast speed, and at 1 out of 3 this slightly raises the brave damage overall. At 2 out of 3 increases its recast speed, and at 3 out of 3 gives her access to her plus variant for her HP attack, which is going to be a melee brave plus HP attack. And again, bigger damage if the enemy have the snake bite debuff, and increases the snake bite stacks on target by 1. And the max for this is going to be 3, just like it usually is. Now, if you do decide to realize this weapon at 0 out of 3 limit break when you're using Sadistic Spikes, it will now have a slightly raised max brave overflow limit and recovers 1 use of the snake bite and lash ability, and this is only up to its initial value, of course, and you will also gain access to the plus variant of her HP attack. This now increases the number of brave hits to 2 and increasing the brave potency as well, and the overflow can go up to 120% of her max brave. At 1 out of 3 it moderately increases her max brave and her attack, and at 2 out of 3 when using Sadistic Spike it will now inflict 2 stacks of snake bite instead of 1, but the max is still at 3 for 6 turns. And when the battle starts, this will now inflict 1 stack of snake bite debuff on a random target for 6 turns. This will also grant her a medium max brave up for 8 turns at the start of the battle. And finally, at 3 out of 3 when you're using Sadistic Spikes, it will now have a total of brave hits of 6 and increasing its total brave potency, and again slightly increasing the max brave overflow limit. And the bonus spear that you're going to be getting here is called Weak Power. When hitting a target's weakness, this will raise brave damage dealt by 10%. Okay, so now let's take a look at 7's rework, which is going to be coming out at the same time this banner comes out. So the first thing that we want to take a look at is her first ability, the Snake Bite and Lash. So the biggest difference here now is the trigger of the HP attack after use. I think this is the biggest thing. Before, you had to get her max brave, or her brave, sorry, up to her max brave, so basically 100% of her max brave before this actually triggers an HP attack. There is also a slight improvement on the max brave up, which also extends its duration by 2 turns, making it to 8 instead of 6. Now, taking a look at the second ability called Elemental Slash, I think the biggest thing here is the actual addition of a max brave overflow of 120%. Everything else still stays the same. However, before it didn't have any max brave overflow, it will just trigger twice. So having this is actually really great for more damage. And of course, the addition of the plus variant of her brave attack. This is actually something new as well. It will now be a 2-hit Fire Ice Thunder brave attack, and moderately increasing the total brave potency, greater brave damage if the target has snake bite, and increases the snake bite stack on the target by 1 as well. Okay guys, so after hearing all this information, how much should you be investing on 7, especially with her EX Plus? I honestly feel like you can start this off at 0 out of 3 as well, because this is where she actually gets her plus variant for her HP attack. However, if you really want her to be pretty useful for you, I suggest going minimum at 2 out of 3. This is because it inflicts 2 stacks of snake bites when you're using the sadistic spikes now, but the bigger kicker here is obviously the 1 stack of snake bite when the battle starts on a random, it may be on a random target, but if you know it's a one-way fight, you definitely have that opportunity to inflict that snake bite straight away when the battle starts. This also grants herself that medium max brave up for 8 turns at the start, which is really nice. And I do feel like, because her ramp up time is kind of different in terms of Golbez, where it's a buff, her one is more of a debuff, so this is pretty useful for her. So I do highly feel like that going 2 out of 3 limit break is the minimum requirement. And of course, once you go 2 out of 3, you might as well go 3 out of 3, and this just makes sure that she actually caps on her ability. Remember, this does trigger twice, so, and the base version is only 3 hits, which will probably not cap her max brave, to be completely honest with you guys. Of course, if you have some brave battery, it will get there. However, if you, for whatever reason, she starts off at 0 brave, then having that extra damage, brave damage, is definitely gonna help. And now it's obviously a twice as much as brave damage, because you're hitting it 6 times instead of 3. Okay, now let's talk about the closest comparison that I can kind of make when it comes to 7, and I think it's a fusion between Jet and Fran. And the reason for this is Jet actually triggers his Jet Slash twice, obviously depending on the situation, but that's the same thing that can be applied to 7. She actually triggers her Elemental Slash twice as well, so definitely kind of similar. Obviously 7 has a multiple amount of different elements with her Elemental Slash. However, this is kind of similar, and the reason why I added Fran here, because Fran has this unique debuff as well, which kind of acts, I mean, sort of the same as the snake bite. The snake bite only lowers the defense, whereas Fran's adds up depending on the number of stacks. However, I still feel like they are kind of the same because they are unique debuffs. So there you go. Okay guys, so we're finally towards the end of this video, and of course I should be giving you guys reasons why you should and should not be pulling for this banner. We'll start off with why you should be pulling for this, and that is if you actually need a melee DPS. Now Golbez is a mix, I do understand that. However, I do classify him as a melee DPS only for the sole reason that both his ability 1 and 2 are considered melee DPS. So if you have a lot of melee DPSs already, just like the list here. If you have Tifa, Cloud, Sephiroth, Squall, and you know, other melee DPSs that I haven't mentioned, if you have an abundance number of them, it's probably not a good idea to do it. However, I do feel like in terms of DPS or numbers that are popping up in your screen, I do feel like Golbez is a little bit above some of these characters. Obviously, probably not Sephiroth in a way, but I do feel like with his EX ability, he is up there. But in terms of his just ability 1 and 2, I don't think he's gonna top Sephiroth in that department. But yeah, that's just my own opinion. But obviously his EX makes up for it. I mean, his EX is basically way better than Sephiroth's, to be completely honest with you guys. And of course there are other DPS, magic DPSs, if you really want to compare Golbez as a magic DPS because of his EX ability. We have Ultimisia, Emperor, Kuja, and like I mentioned, he is kind of like Ace in a certain way as well. So these are the reasons why you shouldn't be pulling for this, because you have an abundance of DPSs already. And I mean, there are a lot of DPSs. They come a dime a dozen, just like what most people say. So, but if you're lacking on the DPS, then I highly suggest you consider pulling for this banner. Now let's take a look at some of the next reasons why you should be pulling for this, and that is if you need more characters for Dimensions End, and of course if you're a big fan of Golbez or 7. There is going to be a new floor coming up for Dimensions End, and of course this is going to be updated every month as well. So you just have to make sure that you have characters and look forward ahead of time which characters do you think will be useful in the next couple of floors. So if you do need some melee DPS or whatever like that for your Dimensions End, then this is a pretty good time to actually pull for it. I don't really know how good 7 is going to be, since I never really use her that much, so I have sort of just a vague idea. But I know for a fact that Golbez is actually really good. And of course, the last reason why you should not be pulling for this is basically if you are just waiting for the next couple of banners that are coming out. Obviously 8, Zack, Ignis, and Aranea are the biggest ones to come out. I don't know about 8. I haven't really seen him in action just yet. I haven't really looked that far ahead. I will be doing that pretty soon though. But I do know Zack is going to be a monster, and Ignis is a very good support as well. And of course, Aranea, our global first character, is, I guess, anticipated to be quite a beast as well. So if you are waiting for these banners, then I highly suggest you just wait and don't pull for this banner. However, like I said, favorites over anything else. So, you know, if you really like Golbez, and I mean it's hard not to in this game because he's actually really good, then you should just pull for this and, you know, go for your favorites. Okay guys, so I think I'll end the video right here, but a couple of announcements before we move forward. The first one is don't expect a pull video for Golbez's Lost Chapter, because I already had his EX previously and I actually had to pity Sephiroth because, yeah, he's my favorite villain, so I couldn't get his EX with my multis, and I went down the rabbit hole and I ended up pitying him, and I don't have any more resources. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for the first announcement. And the second one is, did you like the way I did some comparisons for the character? Let me know down in the comments below, because I really appreciate those feedbacks. I know some of you didn't like this new setup where I have both the reasons up here. However, some of you actually liked it as well, so I'm really not sure where to go with this one. So at the moment, I'm just staying with as is. If there are more people complaining, saying the old one is better, I may go back on that one. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below if you do appreciate some sort of comparison, and if not, then yeah, leave down in the comments below as well. Remember to click like and subscribe If you haven't already, I'm running out of breath here. Remember to click like and subscribe if you haven't already. I do really appreciate it if you do click that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. And of course, if you leave a like on this video, it helps out with the YouTube algorithm, making sure that this video goes out to other people. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and on Facebook at Monchkinz Gaming. Those are my social medias. So if you have any questions or you just want to talk about Dissidia or Omnia, more than welcome to private message me there. And yeah, that's it guys. This is Monchkinz logging off, and I'll see you guys in the next level.